Hey everybody, welcome to a brand new chapter of Old Man Brad. Whether you are new to the show or returning for another chapter, thank you so much for giving me a listen. And if you love the show, drop me a review over on your favorite podcast app, or you can become a patron over at patreon.com/oldmanbrad. So we've reached my favorite month of the year. We've made it to October, and I have a lot coming to you guys in October. We have 4 great Tales from Tubi's coming soon. I have multiple interviews lined up. I have multiple reviews coming between here and over on Instagram and TikTok where I do videos. Just make sure you follow over there so you don't miss those quick reviews. But October is going to be so much fun. We're going to kick it off this chapter with the new film Little Bites, which is coming out October 4th. It is written and directed by Spider-One, who you may know as the frontman of Power Man 5000, but he also has previous films that came out that I enjoyed both of, Allegoria, which came out a couple years ago, and Bury the Bride, which was a Tubi original that came out last year. His new film, Little Bites, like I said, comes out October 4th. It stars Krsy Fox, and I got to sit down and chat with Spider-One and Krsy Fox about the film, which we will dive into that interview here very soon. But before we do, I want to say if you're in the Cincinnati area, come out to Frightful Fridays on the 3rd Friday of the month. I host a horror screening, and our screening for October is Trick or Treat. Yes, Trick or Treat, not to be confused with Trick or Treat. Trick or Treat with our favorite candy-wielding kid, Sam. October 18th, 10 p.m., come out to the Esquire Theater and let's watch a movie together. And if you're in Cincinnati, the Cincinnati Comic Expo is also taking place that weekend from the 18th to the 20th. A lot going on that weekend. It's going to be so much fun. All right, let's move into Little Bites.
Do you believe in God?
I think you must. Because you believe in me.
I love you, baby.
I love you too, Mom.
What's that? Dinner bell. I bet you're a wonderful mother.
Mom!
Jesus, Mindy. Are you all right?
You hear her too, right? It's not just me.
Mom, what's wrong with you?
It turns out monsters are real. And there's one downstairs.
In a desperate attempt to protect her 10-year-old daughter, a young widow allows a nightmarish monster to slowly eat her alive. This is written and directed by Spider-One and stars Krsy Fox, John Sklarov, and a few more like Barbara Crampton, Heather Langenkamp, Bonnie Aarons, Chaz Bono, and a few others. I'm not going to dig into a big review. I'll give you some thoughts on the other side of the interview. But before we dive in the interview, I'm going to say I really did like this movie quite a bit. This is a very personal film for Spider-One. He kind of explains a lot in the interview, but this is a movie, having 2 kids really resonated well with me and really hooked me in. I'm not going to dive much further into that. Let's move into my interview with Spider-One and Krsy Fox, and I will talk to you on the other side. My guests today have worked on many projects, from everything from music to writing to producing, directing, and much more. Their new film, Little Bites, comes out October 4th. I'm so excited to welcome in Krsy Fox and Spider-One. How you both doing today?
Thanks.
Great.
Good. Thanks for having us.
Now, Spider, I know this is a very personal project for you. How did you come up with Little Bites?
Yeah, you're right. I mean, it's directly, inspired by my experience and our experience together as parents, and how anyone who has kids will understand that it is a 24/7 nonstop stress fest, worry fest. You feel like you're failing miserably, then you're doing great, and then you're failing miserably again. And you're raising kids in a less than friendly world sometimes. And you're always sort of trying to figure out how to protect them. Like all great horror and science fiction, you take a real life, relatable scenario and you insert monster, to represent all those horrible things in the world. So that really was the beginning of the idea. And once I sort of had the general concept, the script flowed pretty quickly and naturally because you're just constantly just dealing from real life feelings and scenarios.
And Krsy, for you, how did you prepare for, this role? Because, you have a lot of screen time. You have to carry this movie quite a bit.
Yeah, it was a lot for sure. It was intimidating at first because, if I didn't do my job, then the movie's not going to work. And that's a lot to take on. But I knew when I read this that I had to do this. And, as an actor, there's not a lot of roles that are like this, that you can be so flawed and so vulnerable, but also strong. And, as a woman who, it's sometimes it's even harder to find those type of roles. And I just connected to it so strongly, obviously having a child, but also just the power dynamics in this and the abuse dynamics, that I just was like, this is an important thing for me to do. And so when I went into it, I always kept my daughter in the back of my mind. But I also think there's like a deep sadness to this film where we've all been there. We've all had people pass judgment on us when they don't really know what's going on inside and at home. And, and I think that I tried to really let myself be completely vulnerable to this character. But then also as she does through the movie, she's always trying to hold herself back. And she's always trying to she's sad or she's angry. And I think that was a really, it really helped push the character, and there was so much space in the scenes and in between the dialogue that you got to really think about your next move, especially with the monster. And we do a lot of rehearsal and to prepare for these films, but that was the one character I didn't really rehearse with, was the monster, because I felt like it was way more authentic to just go into that environment with him in the makeup and let it happen. And luckily we shot a lot of that stuff right at the beginning of the movie. So my headspace just sort of stayed there. And it took me like a month to stop feeling like that after the movie was done. So.
And with that, John Sklarov played Aguiar. And this is for both of you. What was it like for you, Spider, the first time he showed up on set, full makeup and fully into it? Because he is there. And for you, Krsy, you said you didn't rehearse with him. Like, getting to see that in that first time, you're just like, oh.
Yeah, it was pretty amazing. I mean, we've spent took a lot of time and care developing that creature, not only physically, but the characteristics of the way he would speak and, his sort of like pompous attitude. And so we didn't, we did a one makeup test, but until you get him in that environment, in that dark room, and in the way we lit him was very, very specific to whatever scene was happening. And we don't reveal it. We slowly reveal more and more of him as the film goes on, until you get in that moment, you don't really know 100% if it's going to work. And it was such a exciting moment to see how scary this felt. And, and for Krsy to be alone in a dark room with that, and at times probably barely be able to see anything, I think it created a real sense of reality for something so crazy and so, fantastic to have it feel so grounded and so real. I think we all felt how creepy it was while we were shooting, for sure.
Yeah, all the hairs stood up on the back of your neck. I mean, the first scene I shot with him was like that opening scene where I open the door and you can't really see him, and he says he's hungry. And I remember that I could hear his voice and I knew what he looked like, but I couldn't see him. And I got so freaked out in that moment. And I was just like I felt like I couldn't breathe. And it was weird. I just felt like a little kid who's scared of the dark. You know what I mean? And so that was the moment when I knew, because after that, John would be like, hey, do you want to run lines? And I'm like, yeah, I'll be right back. And I would just avoid him because I was like, whatever just happened there, I want that to happen every single time I get in the room with him. I want to feel that scared. And it really did happen every time. And then as, the relationship progressed and he started singing to me and saying awful things, it was just this natural reaction to, like, your whole body is telling you to run and get out of that room, but you can't. Even as an actor, like, I was like, I don't want to be here. I don't want to sit here. Like, they would call cut and I would be like, okay, well, you reset. I'm going to stand in the hallway. I don't want to be in here. So it was really a cool experience in that way.
And you could tell those scenes with you, especially in the room, that there was a lot of tension. I couldn't take my eyes off the screen as I was watching. I was drawn in, and I was like, I have to listen to every word that's being said right now. Like, oh my gosh, it drew me in, and it was fantastic.
Oh, awesome. Thank you. Yeah, I can vouch that those tears were real. They were. There was
a couple of moments where I asked the makeup girl, Ashley, I was like, how did it look on? Because I couldn't see the monitor because I was in every scene basically. And she was like, oh, when you were crying. I'm like, I was crying. I was like, it kind of like just went numb. And I was like, she's like, oh yeah. I was like, oh God, I don't even know what's happening to me right now. I just want to not be in this room with him. So it was cool.
Now, did you find any particular scenes very difficult aside from, the first time you got to kind of be in that room with them, obviously? Like either of you, like whether it directing or acting, anything stand out?
Well, I mean, it's
you
for
go
me,
first.
it's not, it's never the most comfortable feeling to watch your wife being like her thighs being nibbled on. So
it's fair.
But, you got to put that aside, and I was pretty sure she wasn't enjoying it, so because of that, it was a little bit better. But I certainly had it a lot easier than you did, so you can tell.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, that scene was one of the worst. Because at that point, I was just really exhausted and really he's really biting my leg, and he has those prosthetic teeth, and they're sharp, and you just having that thing, and he's like between your legs and laying on you, and I'm like, just stop touching me. That was hard to get through. Those, like, that scene, I remember when we were done, I was so happy it was over.
I remember you being very like, there's many moments of this film where I was feeling guilty of putting her through all this, but there's a scene where we finally kind of get to see the extent of the damage he's done on her body. And I remember you coming out of makeup and just being like literally shaking from having to deal with that.
Yeah, I think it was, we spent several hours. I literally was in barely underwear, standing like this while 4 people applied prosthetics to my whole entire body. And then you're looking at it and it's so gruesome. And I just got to a point where I was like, even though our makeup team's amazing and they're all my friends, and it was like, I just was like, I don't want anyone to touch me. I don't want anyone near me. I wanted to scream. And it was, I think this was day 10 into shooting. So I'd already felt like so violated physically anyway. And then I was hyper emotional because I'd been crying every day. And, that I remember, I went in, I came and I was shaking, inspired, and I just went in the bathroom and I just was like, I just need to breathe for a second. And we just stood there quietly. And then we did that scene. So the emotion in that scene was really real. And then actually after standing there and getting that done for so long, I think when I looked in the mirror on camera was the first time I actually saw the whole job. And I was like, it really, like, I felt like I couldn't breathe almost. I was like, wow, this is heavy.
And about how long was the shoot?
About 12 days.
12 days.
Yeah,
Okay.
12 days, which is really, really fast to make a movie.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
If anybody who makes movies, if you have any idea of, like, most people will think 25 days is impossible, and we did it in like half the time. Most movies take months, we just go in there and, try to be as prepared as possible and make sure that everybody involved is professional and talented, and we just go in and there isn't a moment of relaxing, it's just work.
Yeah.
And you guys coming from, Allegoria, Bury the Bride, now Little Bites, and then you have more after this. Like, what have you learned kind of on each step of the way as you've kind of progressed through your films?
Yeah, I mean, I learn something new every film, and I hope that each one gets better, not only technically but story-wise. I think you're always learning. You watch your movies back, and you sometimes you only see the things you did wrong, or you could have done differently, and then you take that knowledge and bring it to the next one. And I think for me, I've gained like a certain amount of confidence now. When you make a movie, your first movie, you don't know how to make a movie. You're just like, oh God, I hope, you have an idea of what a movie is and how you make it, but I didn't go to school for this. Our film school is watching movies.
Mhm.
So the more you do it, the more you learn. And now, I feel like, yeah, I know how to make movies, after a few, yeah.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think like I've grown immensely as a producer. I've had to learn a lot because on these films, I'm usually the main producer dealing with all the logistical stuff. And I think like just learning, like I can schedule a shoot so well now. I'm like, we never go over, we never, and I'm like proud of those things. And also just I edit the films as well. So I think that I've grown a lot as an editor, and I think that just really trusting, my background is I also am a musician, so I think it's like a lot of it's feel, and if things feel right, then they are, because art is so subjective. And I think that I kind of approach editing that way, but I also approach my performances that way. And I just think that we just have grown a lot, and we've just learned like, oh, this last one, that was a nightmare. Let's make sure we don't do that again, and step up our game. And the one thing that we've always done is, we try to put all of our money on the screen and towards the talent. And it really has gone a long way for us. So I think that that's always super important to us, is just the performances and just putting as much production value as we can into these films.
Yeah, you have to learn to be incredibly prepared, but then also have the ability to scrap everything you prepared for and do it in an entirely different way. Because inevitably, in these kind of movies, indie filmmaking, where you're not building sets, you're not, things change,
Yeah.
weather changes, things happen, and you have to be able to adapt and be incredibly flexible and creatively quick, because you may have to change something, right on the spot, or rewrite a scene because it's not working, and you got to, so that's another thing that it's really important to be able to accomplish movies like this.
I think we talked before, as a parent, this did resonate with me. What do you hope like people that see this movie kind of get out of it, or what you want them to get out of it watching it?
Yeah, I mean, I think for me, it just like making music. I mean, I think I always want everybody to just sort of appreciate it from a base level. Like, it's just entertaining. It's a cool story. That's a great monster. And then if anyone can get, relate to it on deeper levels, then I think that's just a bonus. So, if I was to have any kind of thing that I'd want somebody to walk away from this movie is that I like the concept of survival. I like the concept of, hope. And I think that this movie represents that in sort of like the most bizarre, darkest way at the very end. If you, but this idea that, you are not alone, what you are going through, someone else has gone through. And, even if there's a flesh-eating monster in your basement, you can figure out a way to get out of this.
Yeah. No, I mean, for me, I think I'd love obviously people to see how much love and heart was put into this film, because we literally do 1,000 jobs, and this was such a personal film. So I think just hopefully appreciating that element of it I hope people are really scared, because it's a very creepy film. And I also, I want people to think about sort of what I touched on earlier, just like that there's so much judgment being passed, but you don't really know what's going on in someone's life. And maybe giving someone a break once in a while, or extending a hand, or being, a little understanding instead of just assuming that, there's something wrong with them. I think that that's the beautiful message out of this film. It's like, and that if you just do that for someone, maybe you give them hope, maybe maybe you change their life. And I just think that that's really important. I think there's a lot of struggles for people, especially nowadays, that, you should never.
Yeah. More so than people realize, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
As we kind of wrap things up, I want to thank you guys for chatting with me. Question I always love to ask people are, what are, a horror movie that you love that aren't typically the more popular ones that people watch? Are there any out there that you're like, man, this is one that I champion for, or I love it, or influenced by, whatever it may be?
Go for it.
Okay. Well,
we have to come up with something.
I mean, there are a few. Well, I don't know if this is a horror movie, but I think it falls in that world. And it's something we saw more recently, but it really stuck with me. And I know it stuck with Spider, was this film called Ghost Story. And it's like about this, guy who passes away, and he kind of comes back wearing a sheet over his head and watching his wife have to continue living their life without him and moving on. And I know there's a ghost in it. So that kind of, but I felt like there was something about that film beyond like the sadness and the realness. It was just very creepy and scary to think that could possibly be a reality. So I loved that movie. I was captivated by that movie. Yeah. And then, there's some of those films like from the early, like, I know a lot of people know the film The Craft, but I feel like a lot of people haven't seen it or maybe missed it. And I think that movie was like pivotal for me. That sort of changed my life and made me feel normal when I was a young girl. So I just love that movie so much.
I mean, yeah, that's the great thing about horror. There's so, we all know the Nightmare on Elm Streets and the Friday the 13th,
Yeah.
but there's so many movies that, I remember as a kid, watching this movie called Fade to Black. I don't know if you remember that. And it's like,
I know
it's
of
about
it.
Yeah, like stuff like that. It's just like such a unique premise. It's about a young kid who's obsessed with movies, and it's maybe it's not a typical horror movie, but it definitely leans horror. And he's just like, he starts to believe that this girl is actually Marilyn Monroe, and he dresses up as characters from movies and murders people, and like that. I remember that being such a big deal when I was a kid, like loving that movie so much. Maybe that was because I related to his obsession with movies. And I saw a movie on the airplane the other day called what was it called? I think it was called Saw the Glow of the TV, and again, not like in my mind like a traditional horror movie, but there's something about that movie that really just like felt it. Just I don't know, it just stuck with me. I kept thinking about it like the next day, and so we just watched Oddity, which is another great little horror movie.
Love that movie.
There's just so many out there.
Oh yeah.
And I hope that we are one of those movies that people see and like, man, you got to see Little Bites.
Well,
it's like,
another good one our daughter loves, she's 5, is Haunt, which was like a smaller movie that came out a few years ago, but she's watched it like 35 times, I think, at this point. So, but it's just like a fun movie, and she loves it. So, our daughter sees 1,000 horror movies. So that's her recommendation.
Well, Krsy and Spider, I want to thank you so much for taking the time out of your day to chat with me. And everybody needs to go check out Little Bites October 4th. For me, it's worth it. Totally worth it.
Thanks so much. Appreciate that.
Thank you.
I want to thank Spider and Krsy again for chatting with me. It was such a great chat with them. They are amazing people. Go see their other films. Go see Little Bites. And I cannot wait to see what else they come out with here in the future. But my thoughts, I gave you a little bit there right before the interview on Little Bites. This movie really resonated with me as someone who has 2 younger boys. And there are a lot of struggles when you have kids. And just this film of this woman, you never know what people are going through. Krsy hit on it. Kind of, you don't know what's happening in their life. And prejudging people for stuff that's going on. There was so much in this film. You could tell that, as she said in the interview, like the emotions that she went through were real and it showed on screen. She killed it. There's one scene in particular, which I'm not going to give away. She explained a little bit on it that is pretty, I want to say kind of emotional. It is one of those scenes where you feel like she's hit that point, that breaking point of fallen to the bottom. John Sklarov as Aguiar, the first time you hear his voice, the voice that he uses and the way that he talks, it's like this slow inflection, and he enunciates words. And then you kind of slowly see him more and more. And it's just like this grimy, dirty, kind of just gets under your skin. There's a scene when they're first sitting in a room together where Krissy's character Mindy and Aguiar are talking, and I couldn't take my eyes off the screen. Like it drew me in. I was hooked throughout this entire film. I was just hooked in. I loved it. I thought this movie was really well done. It hit just right for me. And I'm going to champion for this film and tell you, go see Little Bites, whether you go, get the chance to see it in the theater or rent it on VOD or whatever. but make sure you check out Little Bites. I loved it. It's probably going to end up, you'll probably see it at the end of the year on a list. There you go. You know, it's October. I have each chapter episode of Tales from Tubi or whatnot that comes out. We will have some recommendations for you to watch. Right now, if you follow me over on social media, if you're on Twitter/X, follow me at Tubi Tuesday or over on Threads at Old Man Brad. Right now, I am doing 31 Days of Terror on Tubi. Every year, Tubi does this thing called Terror on Tubi. And this is our third year now. I do 31 days of it. So each day, I watch something different on Tubi. This year, I'm making it a little bit bigger. This year, every day I'm posting, whether it be a theme of something you should watch, an actual movie to watch, actor, whatever it may be, I'm posting something for you to watch along. I also have a link for my Letterboxd list for my Terror on Tubi that I'm doing. I'll post it here in the show notes as well. But you can follow along to everything I'm watching. You can watch along with us. Post your watches. Just let us know what's going on. Just to kick it off, for October was the anthology film Tales of Halloween from 2015. If you've never seen Tales of Halloween, it is a high recommend from me. I love this movie so much. Every segment in it pretty much hits really well. Like, I don't think there's any segment in this one that I'm just like, oh, this one sucks so bad. You know, some anthologies, you're like, these are good, but then it kind of tails off, or, you know, there's 5 and 2 out of the 5 are good or whatever. This one, I feel like all of them are pretty strong in their own way. And if you've never seen Tales of Halloween, go check it out. It gets you in the mood for the month. It's what kicked off my month, and I am so ready. So much more coming out for you guys, but just make sure you subscribe to the show and you will never miss any of them. This Friday kicks off the fiery October of horror for Tales from Tubi. 4 guests, 4 Fridays, 4 films, and 4 decades. So we're kicking off this Friday with my friend Ryan L. Terry as we talk 1964's Pyro, A Man Without a Face. Next week, the Cinema Psychos join me for 1979's Don't Go in the House. Following week, we have Dustin from Flicks and Friends joining me for their Playing with Fire. And then on the 25th, we have Dustin from the Baron's Hideout podcast joins me for Toby Hooper's Spontaneous Combustion. And then we'll end the month with my friend Drew. We are going to talk 1031 Part 2. Last year we did the first film. This year, we're going to end the month with Part 2. October's going to be awesome. Just subscribe and you'll never miss it. But that will do it for this chapter of Old Man Brad. Just snuggle up in that blanket, turn off the lights, because it's okay to be scared. We'll talk to you later, everybody.